Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of How We Cope, a podcast dedicated to elevating your life by your host, licensed therapist, and life coach, Nicole. We're going to start a bit heavy this episode so that we can really get to know each other and why I feel so passionately about what I do. My goal on this podcast is to help you reach your fullest potential through every high and low that life will inevitably bring, through a series of spirituality, mental health, holistic health, relationship advice, and inner child work. Let's get into it. Let's talk about how I turned the worst thing that's ever happened to me into something meaningful. So on September 21st, 2022, my sister died unexpectedly. Well, at least unexpected to me. She died in the arms of her boyfriend in San Francisco from breast cancer without letting me or my family know that her illness had returned. Before I get into how that affected me, I'll give you some context. My sister Natalie was one of my best friends growing up. She was my role model and one of the strongest, funniest, and sensitive people I know. As my older sister, I leaned on her a lot to protect me and guide me in the right direction. 2013, so when I was 15 years old, was when Natalie was first diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was so young at the time that I couldn't quite understand why this illness had not only taken a toll on my sister's physical body, but had shaken up her soul in a way that forever changed the course of her life. Something I'll always remember Natalie saying was, "Why is everyone around me crying when I'm the one that's dying?" I was so confused by this statement as a teenager, but it wasn't until her ultimate death, where I so badly just wanted to take up space from my own pain, that I finally understood what she wanted from us, which was to be strong for her. My sister was a fighter. Through months of chemo, surgery, radiation, she put on a brave face, and she eventually went into remission, but as the cancer temporarily left her body, she made a decision that there were other cancers in her life that she felt she couldn't get rid of. And feelings of resentment, pain, anger, and regret that she felt within her family, she just couldn't tolerate anymore. And so she made a decision that I still struggle to accept, which was to cut off most of her friends and family. And there was still one person that she still let in, which was me. Now, every time something would hurt me or I felt alone, Natalie still let me come over and we would sit and have tea together and share our tears. And she never once made me feel like I was a part of who she needed to be cut off from. And then something changed. She started to text less. She reported feeling tired, not having the time. And I, thinking my sister was healthy and happy, I couldn't understand why she was doing this to me. And it felt super personal. A year went by after this, and I hadn't seen my sister in so long. My dad came home one day and he told me Natalie's moving to San Francisco with her boyfriend. And I don't know what came over me, but that night I felt like something in my gut was just telling me I'm not going to see my sister again. And so I went and printed out all these pictures for her that she had missed over the past year, and things I just thought she would like and memories that she would find funny. And I went to her house with this envelope of the pictures, and I knocked on the door, and her boyfriend opened it and like barely left a crack in it. And when he did, I could see Natalie, and she was like, "Hey, Nick," which is what she would always call me, but she wouldn't get off the couch. And I was so confused and hurt by this. And I just remember feeling like, why didn't she get up? And so no one took the photos from me, and I had to put them on the floor. And my sister broke my heart that night. I left crying for hours and hours, and I felt like she didn't want me anymore. But what I know now is that my sister's cancer had returned around that time, and they told her that it would be terminal and that she wouldn't really make it past 40. And they were right. And so Natalie moved to San Francisco with her boyfriend to live out the rest of her life there, where she felt like she could best protect herself from all the pain and hurt she was feeling living in LA. She blocked everyone's number and cut off any chance or opportunity to see her, and she really succeeded. I mean, my dad one time even drove to San Francisco in his car and waited all day for her to come outside, but she didn't, and it breaks my heart, but he literally slept in his car that night, just waiting for his daughter to come out, and he didn't know that she was dying. And I think Natalie just couldn't take watching people break down around her when she was the one that was dying. And so no one knew but her boyfriend, which again was whose arms she ultimately died in. And so I always have this saying, but it's that my sister died and didn't tell me. And it sounds like the title of a movie, but this was my real life. At 3 a.m, my dad woke up to a phone call on September 21st that Natalie had died. And being frantic, confused, a pain that I would never want or wish on any parent, he flew right away to San Francisco. And the next morning was a holiday for my family, and my mom had called me to tell me that there's something wrong and my dad isn't going to make it to dinner. And immediately, I don't know what came over me, but I asked, did Natalie die? And I had no reason to think this except for that the entire week leading up to that phone call, I couldn't sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night every night in a panic. I was sweating, I was crying. And I had a boyfriend at the time who I called, and I remember saying that my mom is saying that my dad has to go to San Francisco because Natalie's cancer came back. And he was like, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. But I just felt it in my soul that something was wrong. And eventually, as the night goes on, my mom tells me that Natalie's cancer is terminal. And I'm frantic. I'm like, what are you talking about? I need to leave. I need to go see her. I need to say goodbye. And my mom just lost it. And that's when I knew she was gone. I lost my sister. There was no chance of saying goodbye. There was no amount of anger, sadness. I mean, I still, when I think about that day, it makes me really want to break inside. And Natalie didn't even have a funeral. She chose to make it private and have arrangements so that we wouldn't be able to really see her or visit her. And that may have been the most confusing and difficult part for me, is that, you know, typically when somebody dies, you get to be surrounded by your loved ones and your friends and your family. And what we had to do was a private memorial, and I couldn't be around my community when I needed them. And if you're listening thus far, you're probably thinking like, okay, like this is sad, but that's not even what pushed me through the edge. 10 days after my sister died, my boyfriend at the time decided to end our relationship. And I remember us sitting down to have a conversation and him explaining to me that there was some personal stuff going on that he needed to focus on. And this is not a story of him being an asshole or not being there for me. He didn't owe staying with me just because my sister died. And though it was 10 days, the 10 days he was able to be there made the world of a difference. But nonetheless, like, there I stood in possibly the worst pain and situation I've ever felt in my life. My sister just died. Someone that I thought I would end up with chose to end our relationship. I didn't even know who to grieve, how to grieve. But what I can tell you is I lost about 15 pounds in 3 weeks. I slept maybe 2 hours a night. I was heavily depressed, not eating, sad. I felt isolated at the world. I felt angry at God. And I'm not saying this story to make you sad. And obviously, if you've read the title of this episode, it's how did I turn the worst thing that's ever happened to me into something meaningful? Well, about 3 months after Natalie died and I went through this breakup, I got a text from my cousin who's 9 months older than me. So you could say we're about the same age. And the text was a video of her and her husband letting our family know that they were pregnant. And all I could do was cry. And it wasn't because she was pregnant. Of course, I was happy for her. Being pregnant is a blessing. But I was so in my own self. I couldn't understand, how is it that someone's at the same age as me is married and is having a child when I just lost my sister in the worst imaginable way I ever thought I could. I'm going through a breakup and I felt alone. I felt completely depressed. And then something came over me. And that something was my higher self telling me that what I need to do in this moment is the complete opposite of what feels aligned with me, which was to call her and to be ecstatic for her. And it wasn't a fake phone call. It wasn't, I'm going to fake being happy and just see what happens. I mustered up happiness for someone else within the pain that I was feeling. And that decision changed my life. The day after this phone call was when I felt the closest to God. The night I made that phone call, I was packing for a trip to Miami for New Year's. I flew to Miami alone with my best friend, who also just went through a breakup, and she was trying to encourage me to get out of the house. So there we stood, joking on the plane about one day being married and this all making sense. I turned somewhat delusional, actually, which is important to note because I'll bring it up again towards the end of the podcast. But I kept saying, like, you know what, next year I'll be there with my fiance, or I can't wait for you to meet my fiance. And I kept talking to Natalie every day. And the whole plane ride, I dreamt about her, I spoke to her. And there you have it. The next day I'm invited to a party on a boat. Classic. Except it wasn't classic. It wasn't boy and girl meet on Miami boat. It was quite more detailed than that. And what had happened was that Nevin, who is my now husband, was hosting this party, and I wanted to play music on his phone. And I never met him. But since he was hosting, I was like, why isn't this guy playing music? And so I took his phone and I said, can I play a song? And when I saw the background on his phone, I saw that it was a picture of a younger man that wasn't him. And I knew he wasn't gay. So I was thinking, like, what is going on? And so I had asked him, I said, who is this? And he had let me know that it was his brother that had passed away 2 years ago. And in that moment, it was probably the first time in 3 months that I felt like I could breathe. And we laughed together, we cried together. I mean, we probably spent hours talking about our siblings. And it was the first time that I felt safe to do that. And I extended my trip to stay in Miami so we could go on a proper date. And you would think that this is crazy. Like, why are two people that just met planning how they're going to work out their long distance relationship between New York and LA? But for us, we just knew. We knew that there was something here that we had to make work. As we were talking that night, we find out that the Hebrew names of our siblings, Natali and Natanel, literally mean a gift from God. So in a moment where I felt so angry with the Creator, with the universe, I realized that all of this has brought me the closest I have ever been to my sister. My life was meaningful before Nevin, but the light he brought into my life is the reason I was able to keep going. And I don't know how I would have ever done it without him. And this is also a reminder for those of you who feel like you have to be healed in order to be loved. I don't believe that at all. My husband's love for me helped me heal. And why am I telling you this story? I think a lot of people give up. I think too many people feel broken and they stay in the shattered parts of themselves when this is the biggest opportunity to bring meaning in your life. As both a therapist, a spiritual healer, a friend, and a human, I see grief and darkness in all of its glory. I see why relationships have to end, and I see why people choose to disconnect rather than connect to their higher selves. And I want to help you come out of that. I want you to learn from my experience and my story, the way in which heartbreak will lead you to healing. I want you to learn that ego will never get you as far as your soul, to learn how to be happy for others in a time that feels like you can't possibly muster happiness. Manifestation is possible. A relationship with God is possible. It's been 3 years since my sister passed, and there isn't 1 second of any day that I don't think of her. But time has revealed to me that my sister Natalie loved me and I loved her. Her boyfriend actually recently let me know that when Natalie would think about us, that she would cry. And it was so hard for her that she couldn't separate me from the pain that she was going through. And I will always have that with my sister. I will always share this love and abundance of joy with her. And I can feel her in a way that I wasn't able to when she was here on earth. And so I say this story to you guys because we can get stuck a lot in why things happen and why they're happening to us. And if we don't bring meaning into our lives, we will be stuck as a victim. And I want you guys to elevate through this podcast, through talking to me, and know that this is always going to be a safe space for you. So I'm sure that we'll revisit this conversation again, but just know that the darkness, the heartbreak, the grief, all of it, it's here to teach us something. And being a part of this journey together is talking about the heavy things that we're taught to avoid so often. And this podcast is dedicated to my sister. This is how I get to keep her memory alive and also teach you guys that there is so much more into life than always having to stay in the darkness. That's not what we want. We don't want to get lost in our grief and our heartbreak. We want to move through it. So I'm happy to help you guys, and I hope you guys can trust me on this journey. Thank you for being here. This podcast is sponsored by Culver City Chevrolet, where you can lease a Chevy Equinox for $189 a month. Mention your subscriber of How We Cope podcast to unlock the special deal.